Quick note, the audio on this one is a little bit wonky and a little bit loud, so you might want to turn down your audio a couple of ticks before you listen to this one. Thanks!
Hello my lovely little gemstones, it's Saphira, and today I'll be reading Riddle Me This by Quarantine Vibes. Chapter 10, The Dream of Darkness. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. Remus's face was on fire. Not literal fire. Might as well have been literal fire, though, with third-degree burns ripping apart his face and boiling his eyeballs, and Remus shook his head, trying to calm his racing heart. Tried not to think about Logan's hot, graceful outline as he brought down a monster bull with its own horn. Tried not to think about how Logan had seemed so angry not at him, but for him. Tried not to think about his kind words or his big, dark blue eyes or how their hands were still touching or any of that, because no, absolutely not, he was not going to fall for Logan. Logic and chaos just don't mix. Remus, Logan called. Remus took a deep breath and turned back around, hoping to every god there was that his blush had gone down. Yeah, Specs? Damn it, even his name-calling was starting to sound fond. Look, Logan said, his eyes shining, as if the stars they had looked at before were somehow captured in his pupils. Whoa there, Remus. Starting to sound a bit like a certain annoying brother there. Remus ignored his inner dialogue and looked towards where Logan was pointing, at the base of the bullhorn. A phrase was written there, an elegant silver scrawl. Logan read it out loud. In the dark, it's easy to see. Break down your walls, Genesis 1:3? Remus looked at Logan, who shrugged. Perhaps... But Logan couldn't finish. The cave began to rumble around them. The wind picked up and the silver light from the cracks in the cave wall shone brightly and wafted out, surrounding Logan and condensing. What the hell is it now? Remus groaned, trying to reach Logan but getting pushed back by the wind. It seems to be some sort of trap, Logan yelled over the wind. No shit, Sherlock. Logan blinked a few times before blushing bright red. Remus almost got swept back by the winds at the sight. He mentally added Sherlock to his list of Logan nicknames. The light was concentrating around Logan now, forming a cube around him and suddenly going pitch black. The cracks in the walls were gone. The winds died down and Remus was left in the cave with a dark cube. Logan? Remus called, knocking on the cube. You in there? Silence. Remus felt his heart drop down to the ground. Then, a tiny sound, so soft that Remus almost missed it. Remus? Remus nearly keeled over from relief. Logan, what's happening in there? Are you okay? A pause. It's dark. Remus rolled his eyes. Inside the pitch-black cube was dark. Who could have guessed? Yeah, I kind of figured that. But is there anything else? A longer pause and some shuffling. It's really dark. Remus's eyes narrowed. Logan's voice was so small. But it seemed like, besides being dark, the cube wasn't really much of a threat unless... Oh, come on, Remus said, trying to keep his voice light. Don't tell me you're scared of the dark, Specs. I thought you couldn't feel fear. Logan didn't say anything for a minute. Then, fear of the dark is an evolutionary adaptation that humans possess from the time before technology made them super predators and figuratively, being in the dark means to be in a state of ignorance, and though this situation is rather literal, Logan continued to ramble for a while before Remus realized that Logan had never denied Remus's question. Remus gritted his teeth. Solving the riddle would probably be what frees Logan. Remus ran through the riddle in his head again. Remus? What was that last part? Genesis 1:3? Ugh, it had been a while since he thought about Bible passages. Remus, are you there? Logan asked, his frantic voice shaking Remus out of his thoughts. Yes, sorry, yeah, I'm here. Logan's breath hitched. Remus could hear his shaky breaths from inside the cube. Don't worry, Remus said softly, touching the wall of the cube. I won't leave you. Remus wasn't sure how reassuring that could be, but the breathing evened out, and Remus felt himself relax a bit. Promise? Remus squeezed his eyes shut. He wished there was just another monster he could fight. He would fight 100 monsters if it meant never hearing Logan sound so scared again. Promise, Remus said. Now we just need to figure out this stupid riddle, and then we'll get you out of there. Remus sat cross-legged in front of the cube. Genesis 1:3, right? Logan asked. Remus nodded, remembered that Logan couldn't see him, and hummed instead. It's the part where God's creating the world. Let there be light and all that jazz. Oh, I certainly want light, Logan grumbled. Remus laughed. Right, but that's not exactly a helpful passage. I'm surprised you know it. Remus started to shrug, remembered again that Logan couldn't see him, but shrugged anyways. Yeah, well, it's just one of the random things I know off the top of my head. You have a Bible passage on your head? Remus paused. He could almost imagine Logan tilting his head, tiny, confused frown on his face. It made him burst out laughing. Oh, Specs, you're adorable. A card. I'm a metaphysical human being. A card is a piece of thick, stiff paper used for writing or printing. Remus didn't try to explain. He did wonder, though, when Logan's tendency to take things too literally had gone from annoying to endearing. Remus groaned. He was not doing a good job of this whole don't fall for Logan thing. Remus? Logan asked when Remus groaned again. It's nothing, Specs. No, Remus! Remus got up at Logan's tone. He narrowed his eyes. There was a sound that wasn't there before. The sound of something rushing around. There seems to be something happening. I believe my enclosure is being filled with water. Logan's words were clipped, but his voice had taken on its frantic tone again. Shit. Okay, we just need to solve the riddle faster. In the dark, it's easy to see. Break down your walls, Genesis 1:3. Any ideas, Logan? Remus yelled. Remus, I can't. Remus, I can't. Logan's voice cut out with a gurgle. Oh, fuck this, Remus yelled and grabbed his mace, banging it against the cube. The cube didn't budge. Logan, are you still in there? No answer. Remus slammed the cube again with no effect. Logan! There was a soft sound, desperate banging from inside the cube. Nothing was working. No amount of hitting or kicking or smashing was getting the damn cube open. Remus screamed in frustration. How was it that they just came from an entire freaking ocean and this was where they had to worry about drowning? Remus put his ear to the cube, but he could only hear thrashing from inside. Logan couldn't breathe or speak or laugh or... Remus slammed his mace into the cave wall, not feeling better but a bit satisfied when the wall crumbled, because that's all he was good for, breaking things. Remus dug his mace out of the wall and winced when silver light came pouring out of the crack. Remus shielded his eyes in annoyance, then paused. Hold up. Remus grinned. He was good at breaking things. Damn good at it. Remus held up his mace and hit the cave wall again. Silver light poured from the cracks, but hadn't quite reached the cube yet. Remus ran up to the wall just in front of the cube and lifted his hand. He'd break down some walls, all right. And the Duke said, "Let there be light!" He screamed and slammed down on the rock. Light burst forwards, and Remus whipped around to see the cube shimmering and disintegrating. Logan stumbled out coughing, hair plastered to his forehead and clothes soaked. His legs buckled and Remus caught him before he hit the ground. Remus tried to peel Logan back, make sure he was okay, but Logan just buried himself in Remus's chest, shoulders shaking violently. It's okay, Logan, Remus murmured. It's okay. You're safe. Remus stopped trying to push him back and just held on to him, pushing back his hair and rubbing small circles in his shoulder with his thumb. They stayed like that, not moving when the cave around them shifted, not moving even when the floor became a holographic film and they were transported away. Chapter 11. The Dream of the Forest of Dimes. Logan hated the dark. He didn't care how childish or silly or juvenile that might have been because it was dark. Too dark. So dark that Logan was completely vulnerable, couldn't see any possible threats, and couldn't analyze what was around him. The world had been masked in a Stygian haze, and he hadn't the tools nor the ability to navigate it. But Remus's voice was there. He could listen to that, ground himself to it. But then, cold pressure built up around him before he could realize what was happening. The water was nothing like the calming lull of the ocean they had been. It was frigid and angry, and Logan couldn't breathe. He flailed out blindly, his fist hitting what felt like a wall. Logan hit at it again, but of course it wouldn't give. He opened his mouth and the air rushed out of him in frantic bubbles. His eyelids were fluttering and his ribs straining. Suddenly, before Logan could let the darkness permeate his brain, his surroundings burst open, and the first thing Logan could see was Remus, bathed in silver light, holding his mace back and reaching towards him. And in that moment, Logan stopped caring about appearances. He just collapsed into Remus, letting the other side hold him with the same gentleness that had surprised him before. When his head cleared a little from its initial panic, Logan took a deep breath in, Gratified that he had at least controlled his emotions enough not to stain Remus's clothes with something as frivolous as tears, he looked around. Their setting had changed again, indicating that Remus must have solved the riddle. Of course he did. Remus was intelligent, far more so than any of them gave him credit for, and he was surprisingly kind and gentle, and when Logan looked up, he could make out the sharp turn of his jaw. "Logan?" Remus asked softly, emerald brown eyes burning with concern, and suddenly, Logan's cheeks went red. He rocked backwards and cleared his throat. "Are you okay?" Logan nodded and took a small step back from the other side, almost regretting it when the arms that had encircled him fell away. He looked around again. They were in what looked to be a dense forest, but everything was a silvery gray. The tree trunks, the ground, the low-hanging fog, even the leaves. "I think we're getting close," Remus said. Logan turned around and arched an eyebrow. Remus waved a hand in front of him. "I can sense something off. I think Thomas is close. Not this dream, but maybe the next. I could definitely feel him getting more and more disturbed." Remus licked his finger and held it up, then pointed. Logan nodded and the two of them started walking. The wind whistled eerily, and there was no wildlife to be found. The leaves under their feet clinked strangely, and looking more closely, Logan realized that they weren't leaves, but dimes. Logan squinted. They covered the forest ground so densely that it was difficult to see the actual floor. Logan was about to kneel down and inspect further, when a sudden weight on his shoulder made him jump. "Sorry," Remus said, putting his hands up. "It's just..." He scratched the back of his neck. "You've been awfully quiet, Specs. Are you sure you're okay?" Oh, had he been worrying Remus? That certainly had not been his intention. Logan cleared his throat. "Yes, I'm just a bit shaken, I suppose. But I'm fine." He turned. "You did save me, after all." Remus turned an interesting shade of red as he scratched at his nose. "Yeah, well, couldn't risk losing you." Logan blinked, eyes wide as Remus spluttered and stumbled back. Remus coughed into his elbow, still backing up. You were Thomas's logic and all, and we don't know what would happen if we get hurt in here, since none of us have really been to the dreamscape before." And Remus let out a yelp. While walking backwards, he had stepped on a hole in the ground and sunk down into a pile of dimes. Logan ran forward. "Are you okay?" Remus grumbled, the only part of him visible being his waist up. Yeah, he shifted. "Kinda wish I could get swallowed whole, though." He muttered the last part into his shoulder. Logan stared for a moment before surprising himself by giggling. He knew that he should be more concerned about Remus's current predicament, but seeing him pouting, half of him in the ground, was a ridiculous sight. Logan laughed again. Funny how much he was doing that recently. Funny how much he seemed to enjoy Remus's company. Perhaps when they got back to reality, Logan could ask Remus to join him for coffee or tea. They could have a proper conversation with a less stressful environment. "Laugh it up, Specs," Remus called, face a bit red. "Now, would you help me out of here?" Logan trotted forward, careful not to fall in, grabbed hold of Remus's arms and pulled, then landed square on his rear end. Logan tried again, with not much success. "You appear to be properly stuck in what looks to be a literal money sink," Logan observed. "No kidding, Sherlock." The nickname sent a tingle down Logan's spine, and he turned to fan his face. What a strange reaction. "I'll try and find something to get you out," Logan said, and began looking around. A long branch would give him some nice leverage, but the ground was covered only in dimes. Logan looked up. The branches of the trees were high-rising, the lowest ones being around 25 feet up. Logan squinted. Something caught his eye. In the forest of grays, something dark brown and blue hung from one of the branches. Was that? "My backpack!" Logan cried and ran to the base of the tree. How it got there from the first room they had been in, Logan wasn't sure, but it was certain to have something they could use. Logan hummed. He tried to rock the tree trunk, but it stood resolutely in the ground. There were no footholds or branches he could reach either. Climbing would be difficult. Logan jogged back to Remus. "Do you think it would be possible for you to give me your sash?" he asked Remus. Remus tilted his head a little bit, but reached back, wiggled, and produced the bright green sash. Logan went back to the tree. "What are you thinking?" Remus called from behind him. Logan buzzed his lips. The sash didn't go all the way around the tree trunk. He untied his necktie and knotted it with the sash, which produced an adequate amount of length. He untucked his shirt so he could get better reach and looped the material around the trunk. "I'm fashioning a makeshift harness," Logan explained, hefting himself up. "Like Mulan?" Remus asked. "Like Mulan," Logan confirmed, grunting as he placed his feet against the trunk and continued jumping up. It was silent for a moment. The only sounds were the eerie wind and Logan's grunts of effort. Logan could feel Remus's eyes on him, but for some reason he didn't mind. Logan huffed, lifting his arm and wiping the sweat from his brow when he finally reached the first branch. Logan felt the hem of his shirt rise up with emotion, and there was a small squeaking sound from below. Logan looked down to see a scarlet-faced Remus staring at him. "Just be careful, Specs," Remus called when Logan made eye contact. Logan gave him a thumbs up, rubbed his wrist, and tilted his neck back. The backpack was about 3 branches above him. Logan put one leg on the first branch, then threw his makeshift harness at the branch above his backpack so that it looped around. He tied a knot and climbed the rope, landing neatly on the target branch. Logan shimmied forward and reached out, smiling when his hand was able to grab the strap of his bag. He pulled it closer to him. Oh, that wasn't a good sound. "Logan!" Remus cried, and Logan furrowed his brows. "Remus, put your hand up." "What? Why?" "Just do it," Logan said, reaching into his bag, grabbing a certain device, and slinging the rest of the pack onto his shoulder. Before the branch could come down with Logan, he pointed his device, a sleek black grappling hook, at another tree and fired. The branch came down and Logan swung, grabbing Remus's outstretched hand. As Logan had predicted, the momentum was enough to pull Remus out, and the two of them sailed through the air. "Woohoo!" Remus cried and did a small flip before landing. Logan detached his grappling hook and put it back in his bag. "That was awesome, Specs!" Remus cried, then poked his bag. "What else you got in there?" Logan smiled at the praise and pushed his glasses up his nose. "Well, I did tell you that it was prepared for most scenarios. There's food, water, and other assorted tools." Remus raised an eyebrow, about to say something when he stopped. "Huh," Remus said. Logan walked to where he was and followed his gaze. They had landed in a clearing, and in front of them was a large, gaping hole. Logan peered down. It went on for quite a bit, but at the bottom there was a shimmery, holographic film that indicated the portal to the next dream. Well, that was certainly easier than expected. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, the ground began rumbling violently. The dimes clattered around them, causing their feet to sink into the ground. Remus groaned. "Spoke too soon." Chapter 12. The Dream of the Silver Serpent. Remus loved chaos. He did. Making things harder than they needed to be was his jam, but even he had reached a certain limit. The ground was still shaking violently, and from it rose a silver-eyed serpent, as big as the clearing itself. The dimes fell off of it like mini silver waterfalls, though some seemed to float in place. Remus squinted, realizing that the dimes were the serpent scales. The serpent looked down at the two of them, fangs sharpened to a point. Logan began to rifle through his bag, but the serpent lunged and buried its fangs just in front of where he and Remus were standing. "Whoa!" Remus yelled. The serpent reared back, returning to its position of just watching them. After a few minutes passed, Remus got bored. "Hey, Snaky, can I call you Snaky?" Remus started, gaining confidence when the serpent only stared at him. "Listen, we know a half-cousin of yours. Yeah, also a snake. Scales, slit pupils, the whole deal. So how's about you let us jump into that hole over there, and we'll send over some brownies at the next family reunion." Logan frowned. "I doubt that Janice and this snake are related." "Not now, though," Remus said. Normally he'd just swing his mace over his head and beat the serpent, but it wasn't an option when both he and Logan were stuck to the ground. The serpent put its head on the ground, its eyes still so high that Remus had to crane his neck. "One stays. One goes. Pay the toll to complete the whole." When Remus got back to reality, he was banning Thomas from ever reading another riddle or puzzle book. Although, this didn't sound like much of a riddle. The ground under them shook, and Logan and Remus's feet were released, though Remus had a feeling that they'd get skewered by those fangs if they both tried to make a break for the hole. "Choose," hissed the serpent. Logan tilted his head. Another riddle. Complete the whole. Perhaps it's talking about Thomas? Remus blanched. It wasn't a riddle. One stays, one goes. The meaning was clear as day. It was an ultimatum, though by the looks of it, Logan hadn't figured that out. Only one of them could make it to Thomas, and it was damn clear who it should be. "Hey, Specs?" Logan hummed, still concentrating on the riddle that didn't exist. "Thank you. For all that stuff you said about me being important. And about how you think I'm just as important as all the other sides." Logan looked up, brows furrowed. "It wasn't something I thought, Remus. It's true. And you're welcome, but shouldn't we be focused on the problem at hand?" Remus shook his head. "I already solved it." Logan's eyes brightened. It made Remus both incredibly happy and sad to see how much faith Logan put in him. The fact that Logan didn't even question how Remus, of all people, could solve something. "Well, what's the answer?" he asked, and Remus smiled. "You." Before Logan could say anything, Remus charged and pushed Logan backwards into the hole. The serpent watched before lunging forwards and knocking Remus to the ground. Its fang grazed Remus's arms, but Remus barely noticed. He unhooked his mace and rammed it against the tooth. Just because he was staying behind didn't mean he wasn't going to go down fighting. Remus grinned wildly as the serpent screeched. Remus sidestepped another lunge and raked his weapon along the serpent's body. Its dime scale scraped back, and for a minute, Remus could actually see himself winning and maybe jumping after Logan. But then the ground shook again, and the dimes on the ground flew up the serpent's body and replaced its wounds. It coiled, and before Remus could realize it, used its tail to sweep him back. Remus slammed against a tree trunk with a grunt. "You know, the snake I know has much better manners," Remus yelled. The serpent threw its head into the tree, bringing it down with laughable ease and pinning Remus's leg down under its trunk. "One stays, one goes," it hissed angrily. "I already chose, you overgrown worm." Remus grunted and threw his mace, hitting the monster directly in the eye. It shook his head, and Remus used the distraction to dig himself out from under the tree. He only got a few feet before his legs got stuck in the ground again, and he fell backwards. "Choose." Remus flipped at the bird. The snake sneered and bared its fangs, but there was nothing that Remus could do to stop it this time. He kept his eyes open, though. If he was going to be impaled, he at least wanted to savor the gory details before he died. Or whatever was the equivalent for death for the sides. "Chew on this, bitch!" came a scream from Remus's side. Remus tried to turn around, but there was a sudden clang, and he was instantly showered with hundreds of diamonds bursting in the air, falling around the clearing and into the hole. When the dimes were finished falling, the serpent was nowhere to be seen. Where it had been, a harpoon stood, glittering. Remus turned. "Logan?" Logan stood at the edge of the hole, panting. His backpack was on the ground next to him. He held his grappling hook in one hand and a harpoon gun in the other. "You packed a gun?" Remus asked, starting to get up. Logan marched toward him and shoved him back down. His back hit the fallen tree trunk, and Logan grabbed his lapels. "Remus, what the hell?" he screamed. "Logan?" Remus started, but Logan didn't let him continue. "I told you we both had to get to Thomas." "I told you." "I know you did," Remus said, trying to push Logan back. Not for his sake, but because he could feel Logan's hands shaking even as they were balled up into fists. Remus stared at where the serpent used to be. If he hadn't shoved Logan away, the serpent definitely would have gotten to both of them. Then again, Remus glanced at the hole where most of the dimes fell. It seemed as if they had literally paid their toll. So it was a half riddle. Remus still hated it fully. "I know," Remus started again. "But I had to choose between the two of us, or—" "You left me alone," Logan whispered angrily. Remus's eyes widened. "No, You promised you wouldn't. You promised." "But, Logan," Remus said, frantically wanting to calm the other side, whose breathing was only getting more and more uneven. "I mean, if we had to sacrifice one between the two of us, it was a logical choice." "Falsehood," Logan yelled, voice straining. "Stop that. Stop saying such sad things so casually." But Remus was trying to use Logan's reasoning, confused why it wasn't working. "Really, no one would care if I'm gone." Logan stopped, staring at Remus with those big, beautiful dark blue eyes, and for a moment Remus thought that his reasoning had worked. That thought shattered when a whimper escaped Logan's lips, the sound so quiet but filling the entire clearing at the same time. His chin trembled, and he gasped for air as the tears traced their way down his cheeks, landing into Remus's shirt. Remus watched in stunned silence. Not even being plunged into darkness and nearly dying had made Logan cry. Remus brought his hands to Logan's face, desperately but gently trying to wipe the tears away. It only made Logan cry harder. "Hey, no, don't cry. Please don't cry." Logan just leaned his face into Remus's chest, shoulders still trembling. Remus patted his head awkwardly, unsure what to do. All he knew with sudden and fierce certainty was that he hated Logan crying. Hated how sad he looked, how quiet he was, how the silver tears glistened as they caught in his eyelashes. Logan pushed himself back, and Remus was distantly aware that A, he was pretty much in Remus's lap, and B, it should be illegal to be that pretty while crying. "How are you so smart, but so stupid?" Logan asked after a minute, cradling Remus's hand to his cheek. Remus wasn't sure how to respond, so he only shrugged. "I don't care," Logan croaked out, swallowed and started again. "You taught me that it's okay to laugh, and you listen when I ramble, and I'll care if you're gone. He sniffed, face crumpling again. Okay, Logan. Okay, I'm sorry. Remus said. He was completely out of his element. He just wanted Logan to stop looking so sad. It made his heart tug in places he had forgotten about. And I know Thomas is still not too keen on your presence, but he was the same to Virgil and to Janice. And Patton may still be terrified of you, but Remus winced. Logan caught it and groaned. He squeezed his eyes shut. I'm not good with emotions, Remus, but I know that I care about you. You're brilliant and fascinating and gentle, and I just don't understand. Logan ripped a hand through his hair, and Remus winced at the force of it. Why, you can't see that. I'll make sure Thomas learns your importance. I don't care if I have to lecture him for 3 hours, so just... He looked up, eyes brimming with water and steel. Just please, until I can do that, please let me be enough. Oh, Remus really was an entire dumbass, wasn't he? All this time thinking no one cared about him when he or someone was crying. For him. All that time of trying not to fall for Logan when he had already fallen hard. Logan, Remus said, hands still on the other's cheek, startled by how thin his voice was, but feeling lighter than he ever had. Logan, you're more than enough. Remus leaned forward before he could stop himself, before he could talk himself out of it. Logan surged up and closed the distance. His lips were just as soft as they looked, and a contented hum came from the back of Remus's throat. Logan looped his arms around Remus's neck. Remus pulled them closer together, ignoring how his own cheeks had somehow become just as wet as Logan's. Chapter 13. Dream of Reality. Logan was still furious. Despite that, he let a giggle bubble out of him, because he had just learned something new about himself, and learning new things always made him giddy. He liked kissing. He really liked Remus, and he really liked kissing Remus. Logan pulled away and giggled again. The sound used to annoy him, but the way Remus's face softened at the sound of it made him want to do it more. And what are you so giggly about? Remus asked, fond smile on his face as he pushed some of Logan's hair behind his ear. I really like you, Logan said. It was an obvious fact. One did not usually kiss someone they did not like. Despite the evident statement, Remus turned bright red at it. Logan learned another thing. He really liked making Remus blush. Oh, me too. Remus coughed and brought up his hand to scratch the back of his neck, but winced at the motion. Logan frowned, catching sight of a dark stain on the Duke's sleeve. Logan's eyes widened, and he jumped back. Remus, your arm! Remus blinked, then inspected the cut on his bicep. Logan scrambled for his bag and brought it over to where Remus was sitting. It's really not that bad of a cut, Specs, Remus said. Logan shook his head. Proper wound care is the best preventative measure against infection or complications. Remus hummed, watching as Logan pulled out bandages, ointment, sprays, gauze, and scissors. Wait, what, did you pack the whole hospital? Remus joked. Logan shushed him and cut open a hole in Remus's sleeve so he could better see the cut. Only the essentials. Small sting, he warned, spraying the wound. Remus barely even flinched. Maybe you could kiss it better, Remus said, wiggling his eyebrows. I doubt that would contribute to the healing process. Plus, it may be a gateway to infection. Remus groaned and pouted. Logan finished cleaning. Despite the bleeding, the cut itself was mercifully shallow, not going deep enough to tear the muscle significantly. Logan put some antibiotic ointment around the edges and began wrapping it. A hiss from Remus caught his attention. A little too tight there, Lo. Logan yelped a quick apology and set to work with rewrapping, trying not to let his nickname fluster him. Another thing he learned about himself. He really liked when Remus called him nicknames. When Logan was done wrapping Remus's arm, Remus stretched and got up. Logan put his supplies back in his bag and then got up as well. One more thing, Logan said. He leaned forward and lightly kissed a spot next to the bandage, making sure not to go where the wound really was. Because you think it may help. Remus sputtered, the blush lighting up his features. Logan chose not to comment on it. Instead, he took Remus's uninjured hand and led him to the edge of the hole. Ready to jump? He asked. Remus raised an eyebrow. What, not gonna dip your toe in first? Logan rolled his eyes, pulled Remus close, and jumped. It was a risky move, sure, but taking into account their past encounters, they had always landed on something soft before, And what's a little risk when Remus was whooping giddily as they fell? They passed through the film. Logan wondered what new, unique, fantastic environment they'd land in next. Remus landed on a tan carpet. He caught Logan, as if Logan weighed less than air, and set him down. Logan blinked. They were in Thomas's bedroom. Thomas was in his bed, eyes open but not moving. Remus tilted his head. Did we accidentally leave the dreamscape somehow? He asked. Logan was about to answer, but jumped back when the room around them flickered. Suddenly they were on a rock in the middle of boiling indigo lava. Thomas's bed was the only thing that stayed the same. And then the room flicked again, and they were back in Thomas's room. So that's a no, Remus said. Logan nodded, and the two of them walked up to Thomas's bed. Thomas, Logan said, and Thomas turned his head with great effort. Oh, hey there, Logan. You made it. Thomas tried to lift his arms, but it was as if they were held down by lead weights. Thomas grimaced. The room flickered again, and this time they were on the surface of the moon. An oversized centipede noticed the trio, screeched, and lunged forward before the room flicked again and returned to normal. Logan glanced down at Thomas. Thomas, are you aware that you're in a dream? Thomas frowned. Kinda. It's kinda hard to tell when we're just in my bedroom. Logan hummed. That must be why it was so difficult for Thomas to get out of his dream. In such a familiar environment, it can be difficult to separate reality and dreaming. Of course, the constant flickering of the dream environments confirmed that they were still, in fact, in Thomas's dreamscape. Thomas, can you look at your hands and tell me how many fingers you see? This was a common technique that cued lucid dreamers out of their dreams. Hands often don't fully form in dreams, or extra fingers might be tacked on. Other techniques including pinching one's nose to see if they could still breathe. Thomas squirmed a bit, then shook his head a little desperately. I can't move, Logan. The room had stopped flickering. Small things were still off. Thomas's clock didn't change. His lights were much dimmer than they were in real life. The posters he had taken down from middle school were still hanging on his walls. But there was nothing that Logan could point out as a discrepancy with reality aside from Thomas's troubling paralysis. Logan felt a hand on his shoulder. Logan, what's wrong? Remus asked, his tone void of any accusation, but his brows deeply furrowed. Logan gulped. I'm afraid I'm unable to shake Thomas out of this dream. Logan understood now, though, why the dreams unsettled Thomas so much. It was different from sleep paralysis, but very close as a concept. He was awake in a dream that he couldn't control, unable to tell if this was reality or not, with no indication when, if, or how he could wake up. The dream was too lifelike. He couldn't logic his way out. Logan blinked. I may not be able to get Thomas out, Logan muttered, turning to Remus, but perhaps you can. What? The dream is too close to reality. The passing dream flickers too short. There isn't enough to shake Thomas into waking up. Remus shook his head. So he needs something to convince him he's in a dream? But Logan, I can't conjure anything in here. Logan was pacing now, touching the walls as if they could flicker at any moment. No, but just as I am able to influence the dreamscape with logic, you will be able to influence it with your creativity. Remus shifted uncomfortably. Won't that just scare him more? Logan nodded, resolute. Sometimes a good scare is exactly what is needed. Remus's eyes shone wide. Logan smiled softly at him. Go on. Save Thomas. I know you can do it. With that, Remus turned to Thomas's room with a grin. It would be pretty funny if that lamp turned into a spider and began crawling up the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, with yawning patience, a blood-red eye popped open on the shades. It didn't turn into a normal spider, per se. It only continued spawning more and more eyeballs until the thing was covered, bleeding with them. The bottom of the shade fizzled and tittered into one long, hairy spider leg, and it crawled frantically around the room. Thomas paled. That's not possible, Logan said strongly, wanting Thomas to focus on the improbability more than the terror. And that clock looks a little slow. Maybe we should speed things up. The clock shimmered and suddenly began dripping like liquid, the mirror image of a Salvador Dali painting. Personally, Logan preferred geometric art, but he still held an appreciation for the Impressionist. The clock dripped like hot wax. Its clock hands stretched and became actual hands, bony, rough skin sagging and wrist bones shining through, clattering around each other. In the back of his mind, Logan remembered what Remus had said about details being terrifying. Holy shit, Thomas breathed, struggling to sit up but managing to push himself back. Logan smiled. It was working. The more Thomas could recognize the dream as a dream, the more control he would have over his lucid self. Remus twirled around the room, laughing in delight as his thoughts twisted and came to life. Thomas's doors folded in on themselves, dripping and spurting with bloody pus. The walls tore themselves open from phantom claws, and out of the tears crawled dark blue nerves that writhed like snakes. Thomas was fully sitting up now, and Logan grabbed him by the shoulders. None of this is real, Thomas. You know that. You're dreaming. None of this can be real, so now all you need to do is wake up. Thomas looked like he was trying to blink. He tried again, this time succeeding in blinking hard. His room had dissolved. The field below them was teeming with bees and ants and worms and beetles and ladybugs. Thomas, wake up. Wake up. Thomas let out a guttural cry, and the world around them went black. Chapter 14. Dream of the Future. Remus giggled, slightly unhinged. The last time he had felt this good about creating was, well, he couldn't remember. Thomas was letting him create, completely unfettered, and those creations came to life with delightful little twists of their own. The thoughts and images bubbled at Remus's fingertips, and he spun around in a dizzy haze. Behind him, Logan was yelling at Thomas to wake up, his voice calm, steady, and not at all scared. If it had been just a day ago, Remus would have been offended. He took pride in being able to scare people, and he was sure that if Logan didn't know who was controlling the creations, he would be scared. The thought only made Remus's chest swell with happiness. And then the room around them clapped, and there was a darkness so vast that it was almost bright. Usually Remus reveled in the darkness, the secrets it could hide, but he felt his heart stutter. Where was Logan? Then another flash, and Logan and Remus were sitting at the floor of Thomas's bed. Instantly, Logan reached for Remus's hand, and Remus was happy to provide. He looked up to where Thomas sat bolt upright, panting. "This is real," Thomas said, holding his head in his hands for a moment before shooting up to turn on the lights. "This is real. This is real." Logan nodded, patiently guiding Thomas through a reality check until Thomas calmed down enough to sit on his bed again. Thomas looked at Remus, and Remus, loath as he was to admit it, couldn't help but flinch. Was Thomas mad at him? He did just produce one hell of a nightmare, and not that he wasn't proud of his work. Thomas surely didn't enjoy the experience. Thomas took a deep breath in. Yeah, he was definitely mad, or scared, maybe both, probably both. "Thank you, Remus." Oh, Remus had not been expecting that. Logan sat up on Thomas's bed and put a hand on his shoulder. "How are you feeling, Thomas?" Thomas tilted his head up and buzzed his lips. "Freaked, but better. A bit. I think I know what I can do if I ever get stuck like that again." Logan nodded. "It seems like the first thing you were trying to control was your own body. But if that fails, try and create something that will convince you that you're dreaming. Additionally, you may benefit from keeping a dream journal as well. Perhaps then the small inconsistencies and even your more lifelike dreams will alert you to your dream state." Thomas hummed in agreement. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Thank you." He looked between them. "Both of you." Remus couldn't think of anything to say back, a rare occurrence for him. Logan only smiled and took Remus's hand. "We'll leave you to settle down for now, Thomas. Go back to sleep when you're ready. And remember," he looked at Remus, "not to fear your own mind." Remus squeezed Logan's hand, still speechless as they sunk into the common room of the mindscape. "Well, it took you too long enough." Remus blinked. Patton was sitting up in an armchair. Virgil sat crisscrossed on the floor, tapping away at his phone, and Roman and Janice were sprawled together on the sofa. "What, everyone? What are you all doing? Why aren't you asleep?" Logan asked, freeing his hand from Remus's to tap his chin. "Well, we certainly weren't worried when you took so long to get back," Janice said, yawning and getting up from where he was using Roman's chest as a makeshift pillow. Roman got up as well and huffed. "I mean, really. Now, tell us," he said, eyes shining. "How was it? What happened? Oh, was it a grand adventure?" Logan squinted. "It's a rather lengthy account." Remus laughed. "Well, the abridged version is, we fought the Duolingo owl, rescued a rooster, swam around a bit, nearly got eaten a few times, and, oh," he turned to Janice, "we met your cousin." Janice frowned. "I don't have a cousin." "Yeah, not anymore. Logan shot it with a harpoon." "Logan did what?" Virgil yelled. Where did you even, why?" Patton chuckled, patting Virgil's shoulder. "Come on, kiddo. They just got back. Don't harp on them so much." Logan let out a laugh at that. Remus felt his heart melt in his chest, then frowned at the sudden silence. He looked up. Did you just laugh at my pun? Patton said aghast. Logan shrugged, still smiling. It was clever. Patton squealed so hard he choked. Virgil shielded his eyes. Jeez, Teach, put that thing away. It's so bright you could weaponize it. Logan tilted his head, innocently blinking behind his glasses. Weaponize what? That smile, Janice said, and Remus noticed that everyone had a faint blush on their face. I think we can agree that we all just became a little gayer for Logan. Remus huffed jealously, and Roman huffed indignantly. Janice rolled his eyes and snuggled closer to Roman. Don't worry, I shall always be the gayest for you, my prince. The royal nickname sent Roman into a blushing panic. Logan tilted his head at the sight. Yes, worry not, Roman. I'm currently dating your brother. Roman huffed. Yes, well, very good. Wait. What? And we're capping it at that. Details in the morning. For now, let's all please go to bed, Virgil said with a groan and dragged himself upstairs. Wait! No, I refuse to wait any longer. What are the details of your adventure? How did you fight the mighty Duolingo owl? Roman asked, resisting when Janice began to drag him backwards. And a romance? Perhaps blooming in the throes of danger? I must know! Roman moaned as Janice succeeded in pulling him upstairs. Tell us at breakfast, kiddos. I'll make some pancakes, Patton said, winking at Logan before hesitating a bit and looking at Remus. And, I'll bring some deodorant? Remus grinned. Pancakes are fine. I'll bring my own deodorant. Patton, bless his heart, tried to contain his shiver and went upstairs as well. Remus stretched, then turned to Logan and wiggled his eyebrows. So, we're dating now, are we? He asked, delighting at how Logan squeaked and rubbed at his nose. Ah, I suppose we didn't exactly talk about that. Only, if it pleases you, Your Grace, Your Grace, Your Grace, Your Grace. Remus could practically feel the steam rising from his face. He looked at Logan, who was watching on in amusement. Cheeky bastard knew exactly what he was doing. Well, two could play at that game. Oh, it does so please me, Remus said, grabbing Logan by the waist and twirling him around. Detective Sanders. Logan squeaked, letting Remus twirl him. That's right. He wouldn't lose a flirting match. Absolutely not. Logan leaned up on his toes. Then I suppose we're dating, Your Highness. Remus nodded pompously. Yes, I suppose we... Logan cut him off with a kiss, and Remus felt himself melt into it. Well, so he lost one flirting match. They pulled apart and Remus twirled Logan around again. And they may have stayed there until the morning came, laughing, blushing, and flirting, if Virgil hadn't stormed back downstairs and hollered at them to go to bed. Thank you all so much for listening. I know this series has been a long time coming, and I really appreciate everyone's patience in me getting this out. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any other videos that I post, and please follow the link in the description to the fic and give the author some love. If you want to check out other podfics I've done, you can click on the playlist linked on the screen. See you next time!